The rain in Beaverton came soft, almost polite. It tapped the kitchen window like someone who didn't want to wake the house. I was rinsing a teacup when my phone lit up on the counter. The message was from my granddaughter, Maya, time-stamped 11:42 p.m. "Grandma, Mom and Dad are talking about papers to control your money." I read it once, then again, and felt the kitchen tilt a few degrees. The light over the stove hummed. On the table, the mail sat in a neat fan, and on top of it was a business card my husband had kept. Cream stock, dark ink, the words elder law, and a name I still knew by heart. I pressed the card flat with my thumb. I could almost hear my husband telling me to breathe, to look at the facts, to start with the first small thing I could control. On the bank statement I'd opened earlier, 3 lines were circled in pencil. Care facility deposit. Not large enough to set off alarms, but wrong enough to raise questions. I had not authorized them. I had not discussed any facility. In the sink, the water ran over my hands until they felt colder than the tap. I texted Maya. "Thank you for telling me. I'm okay. We're going to be careful. Sleep now." Then I stood at the counter and wrote a list on the back of an envelope. Call the elder law attorney at 8 a.m. Book a cognitive screening with Dr. Lawson. Ask the bank to flag anything over $1,000 without in-person confirmation. Move documents, birth certificates, house deed, the small velvet pouch of my mother's ring, to the community bank's safe deposit box. The pen moved more steadily after the first line. Naming a step gave the night a shape. The house carried the smell of lemon oil and rain. I opened the drawer beside the stove and felt for the packet of stamps I kept there, the habit of a generation that still trusts paper. Next to the stamps was a sheet where I'd written emergency contacts in tight block letters. I added Ruth Kim Accounting and underlined it twice. I thought about my daughter Linda and her husband Daniel. I thought about how loving someone and trusting someone are not the same. Their faces rose, tired and stretched from years of effort and bills. It almost hurt to imagine them choosing this path. Almost. But then I saw the 3 lines on the statement again, and the softness hardened into a new kind of caution. On the porch, the night air smelled like wet cedar. The neighborhood on Willow Creek Road was quiet, just the kind of quiet that lets you hear your own decisions. I locked the door and felt the small click of the deadbolt in my hand. It sounded like resolve. I set the business card by the phone, put the statement beneath it, and folded the envelope list into my planner. On the last line, I wrote 3 words I needed to see in ink. Dignity before money. How to, brief and calm. When something feels wrong with your finances or autonomy, write down the next 3 steps you can take within 24 to 72 hours and schedule them on a calendar. Keep a paper trail. Dates, times, names. This is not legal advice. Consult a local professional. Morning has a way of making the night's decisions look either brave or foolish. Mine still looked steady. At 8 on the dot, I dialed the elder law attorney. The receptionist recognized the name from my husband's file and spoke to me in the tone people use when they remember who you were before the world grew complicated. She gave me a same-day slot. "Bring any documents that are worrying you," she said, "and bring your ID." I placed the bank statement into a clear sleeve. I printed the email confirmation for a neurocognitive screening with Dr. Lawson's office, Thursday, 10 a.m., and paperclipped it to my planner page. On a fresh line I wrote, "Community Bank, ask for Priya, flag transactions." The handwriting looked like my mother's, firm and no nonsense. At the bank, the lobby smelled faintly of coffee and carpet cleaner. Priya met me with a practiced smile that didn't slip even when I unfolded the statement and pointed to the 3 lines. She listened without interruption and took notes on a small pad. "We can set a verification threshold," she said. Nothing over $1,000 moves without your explicit in-person okay. We can also temporarily freeze any auxiliary cards. She paused. Would you like printed statements for the last 6 months? I would, I said, and I'd like a safe deposit box. She produced the paperwork with the efficiency of someone who knows that paper can be a kind of safety. I initialed and signed where she pointed, and I watched her type a note into my account. Require in-person confirmation by account holder for any withdrawal or transfer above established threshold. The language felt like a railing on a stair. When I returned home, the door's old lock scraped as it always had. It would be replaced soon. I called Ruth Kim, the accountant a friend had recommended when my husband passed. She answered on the 4th ring, and when I explained the situation, she said, "Bring me what you have. We start with a ledger of all cash in and out, and we highlight anomalies. We don't need to accuse anyone. We just follow the numbers." I liked the quiet in her words. Numbers have no tone, only truth. In the afternoon, I knocked on the fence that separates my yard from Miguel's. He's a retired police officer with a gentle gait, the kind you get after years of carrying too much weight on one hip. I told him I wanted advice on home safety, and he nodded the way men nod when they're already moving towards the toolbox in their heads. He walked the perimeter with me, pointed at the weak spots, an old latch, a back window that doesn't quite catch, and told me to start a log. Date, time, summary, he said. Any conversation, any incident, not for a fight, for clarity. That evening I called Maya. I told her I loved her. I told her that when adults discuss money and power, even good people can forget they are also family. If anything worries you again, I said, send it in a text so I can save it. Then tuck your heart into something you love, your sketches, your music, and let the adults be the ones to fix adult mistakes. She promised me she would. I could hear the relief in the way she exhaled. At the dining table, I opened a new manila folder and labeled it, Evelyn, Autonomy, 2025. I slid in printed emails, banknotes, the clinic appointment sheet. The folder wasn't a weapon, it was a mirror. When people see their reflection in documents, they remember what is true. The elder law office was a small brick building with a waiting room full of plants that looked like they had been watered on a schedule. The attorney had soft eyes and a firm handshake. I laid out the objects. The bank statement, the appointment sheet, the business card that had survived 2 decades in a desk. I told the story in order. Soft rain, hard lines of numbers, a granddaughter's late-night message. He listened the way doctors do when they're cataloging symptoms. Then he spoke. Conservatorship is a serious step, he said. Courts look for incapacity and risk. Independent medical evaluation is wise. Power of attorney documents can be revoked or revised. Trusts can be updated. We move in sequence. He gave me a sheet explaining what to watch for. Sudden changes in addresses, signatures that don't match, pressure to sign in a hurry, professionals introduced without credentials. He never used the word fight. He said protect. He said document. He said prepare. On my way home, I stopped by the community bank and signed for the small metal box. Inside, I placed my passport, the house deed, a few photographs, my mother's ring in its velvet pouch, and a letter to Maya I had handwritten that morning. The letter was not a will. It was a map of who I am, what I love, what I believe, what I hope she carries. As I closed the box, I felt a quiet click that echoed the one I'd heard last night at the door. Another railing on the stair. How to, steady and specific. Ask your bank for transaction alerts and in-person verification thresholds. Request printed statements and keep them organized by month. If you sense pressure around legal or financial decisions, schedule a consultation with an elder law attorney and bring physical copies of all concerning documents. This is not legal advice. Consult a local professional. The clinic smelled like peppermint hand soap and printer ink. Doctor? Lawson greeted me by name and asked if I'd like the door left open. I said closed was fine. I wanted the air still while I answered his questions. He administered the cognitive screening with clinical kindness. Orientation, recall, language. I named animals. I remembered 3 words after 5 minutes. I drew a clock that looked like a clock and not a wilted flower. When he finished, he said he would send the report before the weekend. He asked if I needed transportation home. I told him my car and I had an agreement. We would trust each other for a little while longer. Back at the house, I sat at the kitchen table with a blank page and wrote what I called my boundary script. It was a few lines I could say without shaking. I am competent. I am making decisions with advice from professionals. I am willing to share information in writing. I am not granting control of my finances or my person. I will not sign anything without independent review. I will not be spoken to in the language of emergencies unless there is a real emergency. I practiced those sentences out loud until they sounded like normal conversation. I wanted them to be a railing too. Then I opened my laptop and changed what needed changing. Passwords. Security questions. I set up 2-factor authentication with the little patience I reserve for modern inconveniences. I closed out any linked cards. I wrote a brief, polite email to Linda and Daniel. For the time being, all financial decisions will be handled directly by me. Please do not initiate any spending or transfers on my behalf. If you have questions, please send them by email. I added, I'm scheduling routine evaluations and reviews. I'll share what is appropriate when I receive it. Before I hit send, I breathed. The weather app said more rain was coming. The clouds above Beaverton were good at keeping promises. When I finished, I turned to the hallway closet. I took down the fireproof box and sorted the miscellany of a life into piles. Family photos, tax returns, warranty papers that had long outlived the machines they described. Anything precious went into a tote to carry to the bank later. Anything merely sentimental I kept in a drawer I could lock. I wasn't removing meaning from the house. I was removing temptation. On the console table by the front door, I placed a sheet of paper under a smooth river stone. The paper said, "Welcome home. Things have changed." It wasn't meant to be ominous. It was meant to be accurate. Miguel stopped by with a small bag of screws and a new strike plate for the door. "Stronger catch," he said. "More in the wood than the metal." He showed me how to log things, date, time, weather, who said what. We didn't talk about family. He treated this like any other problem that could be approached one measurement at a time. In the late afternoon, Ruth called. "I've gone through 3 months," she said. "Those care facility deposit entries. 2 look like tests, small transfers. 1 looks like a precursor to a larger move. There's also a pattern of small recurring charges attached to a card that shouldn't exist. We'll map it." Her voice wasn't angry. It was precise. I thanked her and sat with the quiet for a while. The simple noises of the house, refrigerator motor, a distant dog, rain beginning, made a kind of rhythm. In that rhythm, I heard the next step. I texted Linda and Daniel to come by Saturday afternoon. "We'll sit at the kitchen table," I wrote. "Please bring any documents you want me to see." I added a small note. "I'm well. No decisions will be rushed." The reply came quickly. "We're worried about you," Linda wrote. "We've seen confusion. We need to make sure things are safe." I looked at the words and felt a sadness that wasn't new. People don't always know when they are using the language of care to cover the shape of control. Saturday came. I laid the objects on the table like a measured place setting. Bank statements with the 3 lines, the printed appointment sheet for the screening, the bank's verification form, a logbook open to a page with dates and times and calm little sentences. The business card lay at the top, a header for the story of my choices. They arrived without coats despite the rain. Urgency zipped into their posture. Daniel's eyes moved first to the papers. Linda's moved to me. "Mom," she began, the word already heavy with persuasion. "We need to talk about what's best for you." "I agree," I said. I kept my voice low and even. "Let's talk about what's best for me. And let's use the same words for the same things." I slid the bank statement forward. My pencil circle around the deposits as neat as any teacher's. "These entries are wrong. I didn't authorize them. The bank has set a threshold. No large transactions without me. Auxiliary cards are frozen." I tapped the verification note. Linda's mouth opened, then closed. Daniel said, "We thought." "Well, we were told this is how you get a place secured." It was just preliminary. "For whom?" I asked. "Who was going to live there, Daniel? Me, against my will?" Silence is a useful tool. It's one of the few that requires no maintenance. I continued gently. "I have a cognitive screening report coming this week. Dr. Lawson will put in writing what is true about my mind. I have an attorney who will confirm that I'm updating my documents. I will share what is appropriate. But there will be no conservatorship. There will be no control over my person or my money given to you. Not now." They looked at each other in the way people do when a plan has met a wall it didn't expect to be there. Linda set her palms flat on the table. "You've seemed not yourself," she said. "For weeks. Forgetting things. Getting dates wrong." "I am 72, I said. "Sometimes I misplace my keys, and sometimes I place them exactly where I mean to, like in a safe deposit box at the bank." Daniel's eyes flicked to the folder where a neatly printed sheet peeked out. "House rules, draft." He didn't pick it up. He didn't need to. The point of some papers is simply to exist. I added one more piece, the one that belonged to the old police work Miguel had mentioned. "Oregon is a one-party consent state for recording," I said, "but I don't intend to record this. I am telling you that what we discuss will be logged with dates and times. That way, if memory wanders, we can invite it back to the page." No one raised their voice. No one needed to. Sometimes quiet is louder because it leaves room for consequences. How to, simple and clear. Prepare for difficult conversations by writing a short boundary script and gathering key documents, bank alerts, appointment confirmations, and a log of interactions. Speak slowly, name the boundary without apology, and document what is said. This is not legal advice. Consult a local professional. The report arrived on Thursday at 4:18 p.m., a PDF with my name spelled correctly in the header and the date sitting there like a witness. I printed it, the pages warm against my fingers. Findings, within normal limits for age. It was a phrase without poetry, and that was why I trusted it. I slid the report into a clear sleeve and placed it on top of the stack on the kitchen table. The rain had finally stopped. The house held that washed smell that makes even old wood seem newly honest. When Linda and Daniel came back that evening, they carried tension as if it were a tote bag. I met them with the soft things first. Tea already steeped, chairs pulled out, the light over the table lowered to make everyone less angular. Then I set the report gently in front of them. "This is from Dr. Lawson," I said. "It addresses what you said you were worried about." Linda read the first paragraph and swallowed. Daniel read faster, his finger marking the line he would quote back if the words turned against him. The kitchen clock ticked between us like a metronome for restraint. "I don't want to be against you. I said. "I want us to be for the truth. Here are the bank safeguards." I slid over the community bank's verification note. "Here's the ledger Ruth assembled." I slid a slimmer packet. Dates, amounts, categories. Several entries were highlighted in pale gray, the color of caution. "We're not accusing. We're observing." Daniel let out the air he'd been holding. "There was pressure," he said, as if that were a person who had been living with them. "Medical bills. An advisor said early placement is cheaper than crisis placement." "And yet," I said, "I am not a placement. I am a person." No one contradicted that. Some sentences don't invite argument. Miguel stopped by for a moment to drop off a list he'd typed. Locksmith recommendations, the phone number of a reputable home security company, a reminder to photograph valuables and attach the images to a printed inventory. He didn't stay. He didn't need to. The point of an ally isn't to fill the room. It's to steady it. Ruth arrived on a video call at my request. She greeted Linda and Daniel by name and shared her screen so they could see the spreadsheet. "You'll notice a pattern," she said evenly. 2 small care facility deposit transactions on consecutive Fridays, followed by a larger one scheduled but not completed. You'll also see a recurring charge on a card that appears to have been issued without the account holder's knowledge. The bank has already frozen that instrument. Best practice is to put all requests in writing going forward. She did not scold. She did not soothe. She simply laid numbers like tiles. Linda's shoulders lowered. "We should have talked to you first," she said to me, not to Ruth. "We should have asked." "Talking first saves everyone time," I replied. "Talking on paper saves everyone later." There are moments when a family turns its face back toward itself. They are rarely cinematic. They often look like a pen moving across a page. I took out a single sheet I'd prepared, house rules. I read them aloud the way you read something you hope will outlive the air that carries it. Rule 1, I choose my doctors, lawyers, and advisors. You may recommend, I will decide. Rule 2, no one uses my cards, signs my name, or arranges care without my written consent. Rule 3, questions about money or health go by email. We answer within 72 hours unless it is a true emergency. Rule 4, we speak to one another as if we intend to speak again. I looked up. "Can you live inside these?" I asked. Linda nodded, but there were tears in it. "We were scared," she said. "And when I'm scared, I grab at the biggest lever." "Then we'll trade levers for light switches," I said. "Small, regular actions." We drafted a short agreement on the spot, each sentence read aloud before it was written. "We, Linda and Daniel, will not pursue conservatorship or control over Evelyn's finances or person. We will respect verification thresholds and will not initiate transactions on her behalf. We will communicate by email and wait for written reply. We will ask, not assume." At the bottom, we left space for signatures and dates. The ink dried almost immediately. Some promises want to set. After they left, Maya texted me a photograph of a sketch she'd made, a handful of keys on a ring, one longer than the others, shaded carefully. I knew what she meant without asking. Keys aren't just metal. They're agreements. I placed my own old house key into a small envelope and wrote "Return" on the front. Not punishment. Ritual. That night I slept like I had reintroduced my spine to my body. How to. Light, but firm. Bring third-party documents to hard conversations. Medical findings, bank verifications. Simple written rules. Read agreements aloud before signing and date everything. Use email to create a time-stamped record. This is not legal advice. Consult a local professional. The law office smelled faintly of eucalyptus and paper dust. Morning sun came in slantwise, turning the conference table into a bright runway for signatures. The attorney reviewed each page with the slow care of someone who understands that the rest of your life might sit where his finger points. We executed an updated will and a living trust with clear provisions for Maya's education and for my own care, should I choose it. Not because anyone forces me, but because I say it is time. We revised the financial power of attorney to name a neutral fiduciary with narrow, well-lit powers. We named a healthcare proxy I trust to hear me, not just about pain, but about dignity. He slid the last page toward me. The pen felt neither heavy nor light. It felt exact. Linda and Daniel arrived separately, each holding their own quiet. In a smaller room, my attorney laid out a one-page document he had drafted from our kitchen table version. "This is not an admission," he said. "It is a commitment." They signed. We made copies. The copier ticked. The paper came out warm, another small mercy. Outside, the parking lot shone from last night's rain. Linda walked with me to my car. "I didn't know how to say we were drowning," she said. "You just did," I answered. "And now we are all standing on the same dry ground." I opened the envelope marked "Return" and handed her the old house key. She held it like an apology. I handed her a new key, the one the locksmith had cut yesterday after Miguel changed the strike plate. "When you come, ring first," I said. "When you're here, we'll drink tea. When you leave, the door will lock behind you because that's what doors do. It's not a judgment. It's a boundary that lets us stay family." Back at the house, I taped our house rules inside a cabinet door where only the people who cooked would see it. I tucked duplicate copies of the updated documents into the safe deposit box, along with a flash drive that Ruth suggested, a digital mirror of the paper. I photographed the velvet pouch with my mother's ring and attached the image to a printed inventory sheet. The sheet said, "Ring, yellow gold, sapphire, kept for Maya, for when she is ready for serious promises." In the afternoon, Maya came over with a backpack that had more pencils than clothes. We made grilled cheese the way my mother taught me. Low heat, patience, a lid to trap warmth. While the sandwiches rested on the cutting board, we sat with the quiet and looked at the mountains on my wall calendar. "When the weather holds," I said, "we'll go to the trail by the old fire lookout. We'll take photos and not post them. We'll bring home a small stone and name the day after it." She smiled and told me the name she would choose if the stone were smooth and oval. Resolve. We packed a small box of things for the bank. The signed agreements, the latest statements, a letter addressed to Maya that I updated with today's date. I wrote in it about the difference between control and care, about how sometimes the kindest sound is the click of a boundary closing softly, the way a seatbelt clicks before the car moves. Evening came the way it does in a steady life, without an announcement. I sat on the porch and listened to birds negotiating the last good branches. Somewhere down the block, a child laughed the kind of laugh that forgets to be careful. The neighborhood didn't know it, but justice had happened here today. Not the kind with gavels, the kind with pens and witnesses and the willingness to speak only as loudly as necessary. Weeks would follow. Bills would still arrive. Refrigerators would still hum. Some days would fray at the edges. Quiet justice isn't a spell. It's maintenance. Linda and Daniel would send emails with questions. I would answer in my own time. On my kitchen wall, I stuck a small calendar where I checked off days when everyone kept to the house rules. The checks looked like birds in flight. In early spring, the mountain trail was open. The path was damp but passable, the air carrying that faint green note that says the earth is considering forgiveness again. Maya and I climbed slowly, not to conquer anything, just to be higher than trouble for a while. At the lookout, we didn't make speeches. We ate oranges and let the wind flatten our hair. On the way down, Maya picked up a smooth stone with a stripe through it, a fault line turned into decoration. She placed it in my palm. "Resolve," she said, and I nodded because some names are simply correct. At home, I set the stone on the windowsill beside the river rock that still held the paper from months ago. I turned the paper over and wrote a new sentence on the back. "Welcome home. We changed and stayed." I slid it back under the rock. How to, warm and practical. After a conflict stabilizes, codify routines, duplicate documents, store one set offsite, post your house rules where you'll see them, and schedule quiet check-ins. Celebrate small compliance, not perfection. This is not legal advice. Consult a local professional. Comment CTA. When love and boundaries collide, which sentence would you want on your own house rules to keep the peace in your family?